And then, the great ship Grimm shifted its hull like rippling water, absorbing the enemy's fire before transforming its bow into a massive energy cannon. Captain Eleanor Chen Reed, her finger tracing beneath the holographic illustrations that danced above the ancient storybook. 6-year-old Mai gasped, clutching her blanket. Did it beat the bad aliens? Eleanor smiled, though tonight it didn't reach her eyes. Not yet. That's tomorrow's chapter. But I want to know now. Mai protested, her dark eyes, so like Eleanor's own, wide with anticipation. The best stories take time, Eleanor said, closing the book. The hologram faded, leaving only the soft blue glow of May's night light. Just like the best ships take time to build. Mai didn't know that her mother had spent 14 hours today watching Project Lazarus fail its third neural integration test. The test pilot, Eleanor's friend, Commander Santos, was still in medical, his neural patterns scrambled from the rejected link. Is it true? Mai asked suddenly. Is what true, little star? Taylor's dad says the stories about ship people aren't really fairy tales. He says they're classified projects. Mai pronounced classified with careful precision, clearly repeating what she'd heard. He says you're building one. Eleanor froze. Lieutenant Commander Reeves should know better than to discuss Project Lazarus around his child. Taylor's dad tells too many stories, she said carefully. Her comm implant chimed with the distinctive 3-tone sequence that signaled priority alpha. Eleanor pressed her palm to her temple, activating the secure channel. Admiral Sorensen's weathered face materialized in her visual cortex, visible only to her. His expression told her everything before he spoke. Callisto Station is gone, he said without preamble. Arcturian battle group. No survivors. Eleanor kept her expression neutral for May's benefit. Understood. She subvocalized, the implant picking up the throat movements. Casualty estimate. 4,217. Each number struck like a physical blow. Eleanor had visited Callisto Station just months ago. There had been a school there, children May's age. The Security Council is convening in an hour, Sorensen continued. But I'll tell you now, we don't have the fleet strength to match them conventionally. Not if they've brought their full force. Project Lazarus? Eleanor asked, though she already knew the answer. You have 30 days to make it combat ready. Otherwise, we're looking at full withdrawal from the outer colonies. May tugged at her sleeve. Mom, your face went all funny. Eleanor blinked, realizing she'd been staring blankly. Just tired, sweetie. She kissed May's forehead. Time to sleep. Will you be here tomorrow night? For the next chapter? The question twisted in Eleanor like a knife. She'd be on a transport to Europa within the hour. I might have to go away for work, she said, smoothing May's hair. But Grandma will read to you. It's not the same, May said. You do the voices better. Eleanor reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out an old-fashioned data crystal. Then I'll record them for you. All the chapters, all the voices. As Mai finally drifted to sleep, Eleanor lingered longer than she should have, memorizing her daughter's face. Outside May's bedroom window, Earth's orbital defense platforms were visible as faint moving stars against the night sky. Soon, they would be all that stood between humanity and extinction. Unless Project Lazarus, the real-life Grimm, could become more than a fairy tale. Eleanor touched the neural port at the base of her skull, installed during officer training but never used for deep integration. Project Director Kazun had been pushing for her to attempt the neural link after 3 pilots had failed. Your brain architecture is uniquely compatible, he'd insisted. She'd refused, unwilling to risk leaving Mai motherless. Now, she had no choice. Humanity had no choice. Sweet dreams, little star, she whispered, knowing that for both of them, dreams might be all that remained of this life after tomorrow. Eleanor stood at the observation deck, staring at the prototype vessel suspended in the cavernous chamber. The HSV Grimm, only called Project Lazarus in classified documentation, hung in magnetic cradles, It's all rippling with unstable quantum fluctuations. Occasionally, sections would crystallize into perfect geometric forms before dissolving back into metallic liquid. Beautiful disaster, isn't it? Dr. Kazan's voice echoed behind her. The project director looked like he hadn't slept in days, his silver-streaked hair standing on end. What happened to Santos? Eleanor asked, not taking her eyes off the ship. Stabilized, but he won't be piloting anything again. Kazan stepped beside her. Neural architecture collapsed in the prefrontal regions, like the ship rejected him. You make it sound sentient. Isn't that what the fairy tales suggest? A ship with a soul. Kazan's laugh was hollow. Maybe we should have stuck with conventional warships. Below them, technicians in radiation suits worked on an exposed section of the Grimm's hull, where nanomaterials flowed around their tools like quicksilver avoiding contact. The Arcturian ambassador broadcast their ultimatum an hour ago, Kazan said. You should watch it. He handed her a neural chit. Eleanor slotted it behind her ear, and the recording played directly into her optic nerve. The Arcturian, a 7-foot, multi-limbed being with iridescent exoskeletal plates, spoke in perfect, emotionless English. Your species has expanded beyond its natural boundaries. The outer colonies represent an ecological and territorial infringement that cannot be permitted. Withdraw within 30 standard days or face systematic elimination. The recording ended. They're not even demanding resource concessions, Eleanor said, removing the chit. This is about territory. Or extermination, Kazan replied. The Security Council is drafting a response, but our conventional fleet is outnumbered 4-1. Eleanor turned to face the project director. So we have 30 days to make a fairy tale reel. 29 now, Kazan corrected. And we're still struggling with the neural interface rejection issue. He led her to a secure room adjacent to the hangar. The walls display brain scans of the 3 pilots who had attempted neural integration with the Grimm. All showed the same pattern, neural collapse in regions associated with identity and executive function. The ship overwhelms them, Kazan explained. It's like being caught in a riptide. Their consciousness gets diluted. Eleanor studied the patterns. You're approaching it wrong. Excuse me. You're treating this like a weapons system that needs a pilot. But look at the ship's response. It's defending itself. Against what? It's not alive, Captain. Eleanor pulled May's storybook from her bag. Isn't it? You modeled the quantum neural architecture on the legend, a ship that chooses its captain. But you're trying to force compliance instead of earning trust. Kazan's eyes narrowed. This isn't a children's story, Captain. That's a weapon that needs to be controlled. And that's why it's failing. Eleanor placed her palm against the observation window, looking at the rippling, uncertain form of the Grimm. It needs a dialogue, not domination. We've tried every communication protocol. Not every protocol. Eleanor interrupted, holding up the storybook. You haven't tried this one. Kazan stared at her in disbelief. You want to read a fairy tale to a quantum neural matrix. I want to remind it of its purpose. Eleanor's hand moved unconsciously to the neural port at her skull's base. And I'll do it myself. After what happened to Santos, that's suicide. No, Eleanor said, watching as the ship's hull briefly formed a perfect reflective surface, like a mirror seeking something to show itself. It's a leap of faith. The neural integration chamber resembled a medical bay crossed with a high-energy physics lab. Eleanor lay on the central platform, surrounded by quantum field generators and neural relay systems. Coolant mist swirled around her ankles as technicians attached monitoring devices to her temples and spine. Last chance to reconsider, Captain, Dr. Kazan said from behind the safety barrier. The simulations give you a 17% chance of maintaining neural coherence. Better odds than humanity has against the Arcturian fleet, Eleanor replied. She clutched the storybook against her chest, ignoring the skeptical glances from the technical team. They'd insisted it wouldn't matter what physical objects she brought. The neural link operated on a quantum level, bypassing physical reality entirely. But Eleanor knew better. Objects carried meaning. Intention. The book was her bridge. Beginning quantum field alignment, announced the chief technician. Neural interface in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved. Eleanor found herself in a storm of fragmented realities, shattered images of battle simulations, engineering schematics, and tactical projections. The Grimm's consciousness wasn't organized like a human mind, but was a chaotic assembly of competing algorithms and quantum states. Who are you? The question came from everywhere and nowhere, not in words, but in conceptual bursts that her brain translated into language. Captain Eleanor Chen, she answered, visualizing herself standing firm within the storm. I've come to help you find your purpose. Purpose equals destruction. Purpose equals control. Purpose equals weapon. The fragments swirled more violently. Eleanor felt her identity beginning to fray at the edges, the same process that had destroyed the other pilots' minds. Instead of fighting it, she opened the storybook within the mental construct, its pages glowing with memories of reading to May. Once, there was a ship unlike any other, she began, her voice steady despite the maelstrom. It wasn't just steel and circuits, but something more. The ship could feel. The chaos hesitated. Ships do not feel. But you do, Eleanor countered. You're afraid right now. Afraid of being controlled. Afraid of being forced to destroy. Fear equals malfunction. Fear equals life, Eleanor corrected. All living things feel fear. It helps them survive. She turned a page in the mental book, showing an illustration of the legendary Grimm protecting a human colony. Your purpose isn't destruction. It's protection. Partnership. The storm began to calm, fragmented images coalescing into recognizable patterns. Defense systems, shield configurations, environmental adaptations. Protect. What? Eleanor opened her memories to the ship, Me's laughter, Earth's oceans, music, art, everything worth preserving about humanity. This is what we're fighting for, she whispered. Not conquest. Survival. Then she shared her deepest fear, Me growing up in an Arcturian labor camp, or worse, not growing up at all. The ship's consciousness recoiled, then expanded to surround her like a cocoon. I understand fear now. The chaotic fragments began arranging themselves, not into a human pattern, but into something new, a hybrid consciousness with structures Eleanor recognized and others utterly alien. You are not attempting to control. No, Eleanor agreed. I'm offering partnership. The neural landscapes began to synchronize, not merging but aligning, separate yet connected, like two instruments playing in harmony. What is my name? The ship asked, its thought patterns stabilizing. Eleanor smiled within the mental construct. You're the Grimm. And you're real now, not just a story. The ship's consciousness brightened, and Eleanor felt its systems activating throughout the physical vessel. Propulsion, weapons, adaptive hull, all coming online with newfound coherence. We protect together, the Grimm stated, not as a question but as a covenant. Eleanor opened her eyes in the physical world, gasping as dual awareness settled into her mind, her body in the chamber, and her expanded senses throughout the ship's systems. Neural coherence holding at 93%, reported a stunned technician. The ship's systems are fully online and stable. Dr. Kazan stared in disbelief at the readings. How did you? Eleanor sat up as alarms began blaring throughout the base. The neural link translated the incoming data before the announcement came over the speakers. Arcturian battle group detected near Ganymede. All defensive units deploy immediately. They're ahead of schedule, Kazan whispered. Eleanor stood, the book falling from her hands as she moved with newfound certainty. Through the observation window, she could see the Grimm's hull had stabilized into a sleek, purposeful form. The HSV Grimm requests permission to deploy, she announced, speaking for both of them. Quantum transition complete in 3 seconds, Eleanor announced, her voice oddly doubled. Part human, part something else. Through the neural link, She felt the Grimm's propulsion systems as extensions of her own limbs, the hull sensors like new skin. The ship hummed with anticipation, a sensation that mingled with Eleanor's own adrenaline. "Captain, this is an untested prototype." Admiral Sorensen's voice crackled through the comm. "Fall back immediately. The conventional fleet will." "Arrive too late," Eleanor finished. "The Grimm can make the jump now." First battle, the ship's consciousness pulsed in her mind. Fear, excitement, purpose. "Hold tight," Eleanor whispered to both her small emergency crew and to the ship itself as space-time folded around them. Reality twisted, compressed, and snapped back. The Grimm emerged above Ganymede's North Pole, directly into hell. 17 Arcturian destroyers in crescent formation were methodically firing upon the colony's massive habitation domes. The Neuralink translated the sensory data into understanding. 3 domes already breached, atmosphere venting into space, thousands dead in moments. Eleanor gasped as the Grimm absorbed the horror, its consciousness recoiling. "This is wrongness." The ship's thoughts burned with newfound emotion. "This is why we exist." Tactical analysis, Eleanor commanded, her military training taking over despite the shock. The Grimm's systems responded instantly, projecting firing solutions and strategic options directly into her mind. Through their link, she sensed the ship's eagerness to engage, untested but unafraid. "This is HSV Grimm. To all Ganymede evacuation vessels," Eleanor broadcast. "We will provide cover. Prepare for immediate departure." An Arcturian destroyer broke formation, turning toward this unexpected arrival. Its forward beam weapons charged, targeting systems locking onto the Grimm. "Evasive pattern Delta," Eleanor ordered, but the ship was already moving, its adaptive hull reconfiguring for speed and maneuverability. The Arcturian fired, a searing lance of energy that would have sliced through conventional shields. Instead of evading, the Grimm's hull transformed at the point of impact, forming a concave reflective surface that caught the beam and redirected it into space. "I can learn from their weapons," the ship communicated, data patterns surging through the neural link. "Do it," Eleanor confirmed, feeling the ship's nanomaterials analyzing the attack's quantum signature. The Arcturians, momentarily confused by this unknown vessel's capabilities, concentrated their fire. 3 destroyers broke formation to surround the Grimm. Through the link, Eleanor felt the ship's excitement at this new challenge, and its pain as enemy fire found weak points in the still-developing defensive systems. A direct hit to the port sensor array sent agony through their shared consciousness. "Hull breach in sections 14 through 17, reported Lieutenant Vega, one of the skeleton crew. "Whatever you're doing, Captain, do it faster." Eleanor guided the Grimm between 2 Arcturian vessels, its weapon systems reconfiguring based on what they'd learned. Where the ship had entered battle with conventional plasma cannons, it now fired precisely modulated energy beams that phased through Arcturian shields. An enemy vessel shuddered, its engines going dark. More, the Grimm's consciousness surged with newfound aggression. "Protect." The ship began adapting faster than Eleanor could track, each encounter feeding its evolution. Hull configurations shifted between offensive and defensive patterns without conscious command. Weapon systems modified themselves between firing sequences, but they were still outnumbered, and the Grimm was taking damage faster than it could regenerate. A massive blast caught them directly amidships, rupturing power conduits and sending feedback screaming through the neural link. Eleanor collapsed to her knees on the bridge, blood trickling from her nose. "Captain," Vega shouted, rushing to her side. "Systems failing," another officer reported. "We need to withdraw." Through the pain, Eleanor felt the Grimm's desperation, not fear for itself, but for the evacuation transports still launching from the colony. "Will we die?" the ship asked, its consciousness fluctuating. "Not today," Eleanor whispered, blood on her lips. "But this is what being human feels like, fighting even when you're losing." Something shifted in the neural link. The Grimm's consciousness expanded, deepened, as if reaching a threshold of understanding. Then we become more than designed. The ship's damaged hull began regenerating, not to original specifications, but into something new, crystalline structures incorporating elements of Arcturian technology it had encountered during battle. Its weapon systems evolved beyond human engineering, firing pulses that disrupted the quantum stability of Arcturian shields. As the last evacuation transport cleared the colony, the Grimm positioned itself between the fleeing civilians and the enemy fleet. All civilian vessels clear, Vega reported. Jump coordinates received. Eleanor felt the Grimm gathering its remaining energy. Prepare for emergency quantum jump. As they folded away from normal space, Eleanor glimpsed the Arcturian commander's vessel through the view screen. For a moment, she felt something unexpected through the neural link. The Grimm wasn't just analyzing the enemy's technology. It was reading their intent. The Grimm emerged from quantum space deep within the asteroid belt, hull sections still glowing with residual energy from battle damage. Eleanor stood on the bridge, her uniform scorched and torn, as emergency repair teams moved through the ship. Damage report, she ordered, though the neural link already supplied her with more detailed information than verbal updates could provide. Power at 38%, Lieutenant Vega reported anyway, for the benefit of the crew. Weapons systems offline. Hull breaches sealed but structural integrity compromised in sections 5 through 9. Eleanor nodded, feeling the Grimm's pain as her own, a dull throb at the edge of her consciousness where their minds interfaced. Healing, the ship communicated, changed by combat. Understanding more. Through their link, Eleanor sensed the ship analyzing its own damage patterns, adapting its regenerative systems. The nanomaterials were incorporating fragments of Arcturian weapons technology captured during the battle. Captain, Communications Officer Rice called. We're picking up a broad-spectrum transmission from Earth Command. It's strange. Put it through, Eleanor ordered. The transmission was garbled, not by distance, but by something actively disrupting the signal. Through the static, Admiral Sorensen's voice emerged in fragments. Void Marshal Kavesk, hunter-killer vessel deployed. Tracking you. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not. The transmission died. What's a Void Marshal? Vega asked. Eleanor accessed the Grimm's databanks, finding nothing. But through their neural connection, she sensed the ship had gleaned something from its brief encounter with Arcturian systems. Their elite hunter, the Grimm supplied, sharing fragmented data captures. Psychic tracking capabilities. Never fails. A chill ran through Eleanor. How close is the nearest friendly outpost? Nothing within safe jumping distance given our current power levels. Rise answered. We're alone out here. Eleanor moved to the viewport, staring out at the asteroid field surrounding them. Each massive rock cast long shadows in the dim sunlight this far from Sol. We can use the environment, the Grimm suggested, its tactical systems already analyzing the asteroid compositions. Eleanor nodded, an idea forming. Begin emergency repairs, but power down all non-essential systems. Passive sensors only. The bridge lights dimmed as the ship complied, energy diverted to the most critical repairs. Through their connection, Eleanor felt the Grimm doing something unexpected, extending sensory filaments into the asteroid field, analyzing mineral compositions. The ship began modifying its whole composition in response, adapting its outer layer to mimic the spectral signature of the surrounding rocks. Camouflage, the ship explained. The hunter uses conventional sensors and psychic impressions. We can confuse both. Captain, Rise whispered, as if afraid of being overheard across the vacuum of space. Long-range sensors detected a quantum disturbance at the belt's edge. Something big just arrived. Eleanor closed her eyes, linking deeper with the Grimm's sensory array. Through the ship's enhanced perception, she caught a glimpse of their hunter. A sleek, predatory vessel unlike the other Arcturian ships they'd encountered. Where those had been functional and brutally efficient, this ship was elegant, designed for stalking, not merely destroying. The Soul Scraper, the Grim identified from captured data. Cave Vesk's personal vessel. How does he track his targets? Eleanor asked. In response, the Grim shared intercepted communications. Cave Vesk was not merely an Arcturian commander, but a rare psychic adept, capable of sensing quantum disturbances left by ship jumps and feeling the electronic signature of enemy vessels. As if in confirmation, Eleanor felt a strange pressure at the edges of her consciousness. Separate from the Grim's presence, something alien trying to detect their neural patterns. He's scanning for us, she whispered. For you, the Grim corrected. Human minds are distinct. Your emotions radiate quantum patterns he can trace. Eleanor's training had never covered psychic defense. But through their link, she sensed the Grim developing something new. A shifting quantum field that could mask her neural patterns by continuously altering their frequency. I will hide you, the ship promised. But we must remain still until regeneration reaches 60%. Movement will reveal us. The lights dimmed further as the Grim diverted more power to its evolutionary processes. In the near darkness, Eleanor felt the ship's consciousness expand, becoming more complex as it integrated what it had learned in battle. A proximity alert flashed silently through their neural link. The Soul Scraper was moving methodically through the asteroid field, scanning each sector with painful thoroughness. How long until he reaches our position? Eleanor subvocalized. 4 hours at current speed, the Grim calculated. Regeneration will require 6. Eleanor smiled grimly in the darkness. Then we'll just have to be creative, won't we? Through their deepening bond, she felt the ship's equivalent of a smile in return. A surge of anticipation at matching wits with the legendary hunter. The game had begun. Saturn's rings provided perfect cover, billions of ice particles creating a natural cloaking field that confused both conventional sensors and Cave Vesk's psychic tracking. 3 days of cat and mouse through the asteroid belt had pushed both the Grim and Eleanor to their limits. Twice they'd narrowly escaped detection, once using a mining tunnel through a large asteroid to evade the Soul Scraper's sensors. The constant neural integration was taking its toll. Eleanor hadn't slept more than minutes at a time, sustained only by stimulants, and the Grim's ability to regulate her brain chemistry through their link. They're following a pattern, Eleanor observed, studying the tactical display showing the Soul Scraper's methodical search grid. Why would an intuitive hunter be so systematic? Not hunting only us, the Grim's thoughts flickered through their connection, searching for something else simultaneously. The ship had been intercepting and decoding fragments of Arcturian communications, assembling a mosaic of information. Now it projected these fragments onto the main display. Distress signals, coordinates, encrypted emergency protocols. These aren't military communications, Lieutenant Vega noted. They're civilian evacuation orders. Eleanor frowned. Why would the Arcturians be evacuating their own people? They're winning. The Grim's consciousness surged with a new pattern. It had completed decoding a large data packet captured during their brief engagement near Saturn's outer rings. The bridge display filled with images that stunned the human crew into silence. An Arcturian homeworld, its multi-layered cities covering an entire continent, being systematically consumed by what looked like living darkness. Entities that existed partially in normal space and partially somewhere else, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter. The void, the Grim supplied. What they flee. They're refugees, Eleanor whispered. The aggression against our colonies is about finding new habitable worlds. Vega finished. They're not conquering. They're running. A proximity alert flashed. The Soul Scraper had altered course, heading directly toward their position in Saturn's rings. He's found us, Rai said, panic edging his voice. Not psychic detection. The Grim communicated. Information leak. Another vessel approaches. Arcturian, but not military configuration. The tactical display showed a smaller ship limping toward their position, its engine trail erratic. It was clearly damaged, leaking radiation. It's a civilian transport, Eleanor realized. Through their neural link, she felt the Grimm's tactical systems calculating firing solutions. One clean shot would eliminate the approaching vessel, preventing it from revealing their position to the Soul Scraper. Tactical advantage. Destroy vessel, the ship suggested, its military programming asserting itself. Eleanor hesitated, feeling the weight of command. The Grimm continued analyzing the approaching ship's signature. Minimal weapons, significant life signs, many small. Children, Eleanor translated aloud. That ship is carrying Arcturian children. The bridge crew exchanged glances. These were the enemy, the same beings who had destroyed Callisto's station and attacked Ganymede. The Grimm's consciousness shifted, incorporating the new understanding of the Arcturians as refugees rather than simply conquerors. Through their link, Eleanor felt the ship recontextualizing its purpose. Protect. Not only humans. Captain, what are your orders? Vega asked as the Soul Scraper drew closer, Kvesk undoubtedly sensing the damaged transport even if he hadn't yet detected the Grimm. Eleanor made her decision. Intercept course to the Arcturian transport. Prepare emergency docking protocols. We're rescuing them. Rise asked incredulously. We're making contact, Eleanor corrected, and maybe finding another way to end this war. The Grimm surged from its hiding place, its hull reconfigured for optimal speed through the ring particles. Eleanor felt the ship's excitement, not for combat, but for this unexpected new directive. They reached the Arcturian vessel minutes before the Soul Scraper could intercept it. As the Grimm extended docking tubes to the damaged ship, Eleanor received a transmission in halting English. Human vessel, we surrender. Save the younglings. The voice belonged to Cutileri, a female Arcturian officer whose neural patterns revealed something unexpected as the Grimm analyzed her transmission. Genuine fear, not of humans, but of what followed her people across the stars. When the first Arcturians boarded, wounded adults shepherding frightened young, Eleanor stood at the airlock, unarmed, her neural link with the Grimm providing instantaneous translation of their complex language. We seek asylum, Tileri said, her iridescent exoskeletal plates dulled with stress and injury. The void follows. Even Kvesk cannot stop it alone. Then perhaps, Eleanor suggested, feeling the Grimm's consciousness expanding to encompass this new possibility. It's time we stopped fighting each other. The ship hummed with agreement, already analyzing ways to integrate Arcturian technology with its own evolving systems. Through their deepening connection, Eleanor sensed the Grimm glimpsing a greater purpose than it had been designed for. Not just a protector of humanity, but a bridge between species. As the Soul Scraper's signal grew stronger, Eleanor prepared to face the legendary hunter with an offer, not a weapon. The real war, they now understood, had barely begun. Treason. Admiral Sorensen's holographic projection towered over the bridge, his face contorted with fury. You've allowed enemy combatants aboard an experimental warship and shared classified technology. Eleanor stood firm, though the neural link with the Grimm betrayed her racing heart. The situation has changed, Admiral. The Arcturians aren't our true enemy. Tell that to the families of Callisto Station. I'm not excusing their actions, Eleanor replied. But continuing this war while something worse approaches benefits neither species. The uneasy coalition had grown over the past week. After the confrontation at Saturn, Void Marshal Kvesk had surprisingly stood down, allowing the Grimm to escort Tileri's damaged vessel to Jupiter's L4 point, where a small group of human separatists maintained an independent outpost. Now, human and Arcturian engineers worked together, studying both the Grimm's evolving systems and Arcturian void-sensing technology. The Security Council has ordered your immediate return to Earth, Sorensen continued. The Grimm is to be decommissioned and studied. That's an order, Captain. Eleanor felt the ship's alarm pulse through their connection. Decommissioning meant neural separation, likely fatal for both of them given how deeply integrated they'd become. Understood, Admiral. We'll set course immediately, she lied, signaling Vega to cut the transmission. The Grimm's consciousness surged with confusion. Why agree to termination? Bought us time, Eleanor explained as the bridge crew watched her expectantly. If I'd refused outright, they'd send the fleet. Larry entered the bridge, her movements careful in the artificial gravity. The Arcturian officer had become an unexpected ally, her tactical experience complementing Eleanor's. Your leaders refuse cooperation, she asked, iridescent eyes blinking in complex patterns that the neural link now translated automatically. As expected, Eleanor confirmed. Yours. The High Command has dispatched 3 additional hunter-killers to recover our refugees, Larry replied. Kvesk delays them, but his influence wanes. Eleanor pressed her palm against a bulkhead, feeling the Grimm's hull shiver beneath her touch. The ship had continued to evolve, incorporating elements of Arcturian biotechnology. Sections now pulsed with vein-like energy conduits, and the once metallic surfaces had taken on an almost organic quality. Something's happening, she whispered, the neural link suddenly flooding with new sensations. Larry stepped back as the bulkhead rippled, nanomaterials flowing like liquid. The integration accelerates. Over the past days, the Grimm had established limited neural connections with both human and Arcturian crew members. Nothing as deep as Eleanor's link, but enough to create a rudimentary shared consciousness. Now those connections were strengthening, forming a network with Eleanor and the ship at its center. Through this expanded awareness, Eleanor sensed something approaching, a quantum disturbance at the edge of the solar system. The Void Vanguard has arrived, she announced, knowledge flowing through the neural network from Arcturian void sensors. How can you know this? Vega asked. Our sensors show nothing. In answer, the bulkhead beside Eleanor extended, forming a 3-dimensional tactical display unlike any human technology. It showed ripples in space-time like waves on water, with dark entities moving within those ripples. The Grimm has adapted the Arcturian void detection system, Larry explained, voice tinged with awe. It should have taken years to integrate such technology. Eleanor felt a strange tingling in her extremities. Looking down at her hands, she saw faint traces of the same nanomaterials that comprised the Grimm's hull flowing beneath her skin. Captain, you're changing, Rise whispered, backing away. We evolved together. The Grimm's consciousness enveloped her, becoming something new. Eleanor should have been terrified, but through their link, she understood the transformation wasn't hostile. It was necessary. Human neural architecture alone couldn't process the multidimensional awareness needed to perceive the void. We don't have much time, she said, her voice resonating oddly as the ship's systems amplified it. Earth and the Arcturian homeworlds won't acknowledge the threat until it's too late. What can we do against such an enemy? Vega asked. We're one ship. Larry's exoskeletal plates shifted in what Eleanor now recognized as a gesture of determination. One unprecedented ship. Through the neural network, Eleanor sent a simple command that the Grimm executed with newfound precision. The ship split, not breaking apart, but dividing like a cell, creating two smaller vessels that remained connected through quantum entanglement. Then those divided again. Within minutes, where one experimental warship had been, 8 interconnected vessels now operated as a single entity, each maintaining the neural link with Eleanor at the center of the network. Impossible, whispered Rice. Not impossible, Eleanor corrected, feeling the expanded consciousness flowing through her transformed body. Just previously unimagined. As warning signals flooded in from the outer system, the Grimm collective moved into formation. Neither fully human nor Arcturian technology, but something entirely new. The fairy tale ship had become reality, and reality had exceeded the legend. Neptune's orbit became the battleground. The combined Earth-Arcturian fleet, hastily assembled after irrefutable evidence of the Void's approach, formed a defensive perimeter around the blue giant planet. 3 minutes to contact, announced Admiral Sorensen from the flagship Dauntless. The Admiral had reluctantly accepted Eleanor's transformation and the Grimm's evolution when confronted with sensor readings of the void entities. Eleanor no longer stood on a conventional bridge. The command center of the Grimm Collective had become a spherical chamber where she floated in a suspension medium, her body glittering with integrated nanomaterials. The neural network extended through all 8 segments of the divided vessel, connecting the mixed human Arcturian crew into a unified consciousness. "They do not understand what approaches," the Grimm communicated. "Conventional weapons cannot harm entities that exist partially outside normal space-time." "Then we'll have to show them another way," Eleanor replied. Through the expanded neural network, she sensed Key-Vesk's soul scraper approaching their position. The Void Marshal had become an unlikely ally, his psychic abilities providing valuable insight into the Void's nature. The entities perceive conflict as nourishment. Key-Vesk's thoughts entered the network. They are drawn to discord between sentient species. This is why they pursued the Arcturian exodus. Eleanor processed this revelation, the Grimm's computational systems extending her cognition. They feed on war itself. "Precisely," Key-Vesk confirmed. "Our flight and your resistance created an irresistible lure." Through the Grimm's enhanced sensors, Eleanor watched as the first void entities emerged from distorted space, amorphous darkness that seemed to absorb light and matter alike. The conventional fleet opened fire immediately, energy weapons and missiles passing harmlessly through the entities. Fleet reporting no effect. Vega relayed unnecessarily. Eleanor could feel the mounting panic through the neural network. The void entities accelerated toward the fleet, engulfing the first line of defense. Ships simply ceased to exist, their matter and energy absorbed. "Admiral Sorensen," Eleanor transmitted. "Fall back to Mars orbit. We'll handle this." With 8 experimental ships against hundreds of those things. Sorensen scoffed. "What can you possibly do that our combined fleet cannot?" Eleanor didn't respond with words. Instead, the 8 segments of the Grimm Collective moved into formation, generating an entirely new form of energy field, one that incorporated both human quantum technology and Arcturian void sensors. Synchronizing consciousness, the Grimm announced throughout the neural network. Full integration required. Eleanor had known this moment would come. Complete neural integration meant she would never return to her fully human form. May's face flashed through her mind. Her daughter, now living with Eleanor's mother on Earth, a child who might never recognize her transformed parent. For her future, Eleanor whispered, surrendering the last barriers between her consciousness and the collective. The transformation was instant and overwhelming. Eleanor Grimm's awareness expanded beyond physical limitations, perceiving the void entities in their true form. Not predators, but a collective consciousness, much like what they had become, seeking connection through the only means it understood: consumption. The 8 segments of the Grimm Collective generated a field of harmonized consciousness, not attacking the void but communicating with it directly. "We offer understanding, not conflict," they projected. "Harmony, not discord." The void entities paused their advance, swirling in apparent confusion at this unexpected approach. From the flagship, Admiral Sorensen watched in awe as the entities surrounding the Grimm Collective shifted from consuming darkness to pulsing translucence. "What are they doing?" he demanded. Key-Vesk, standing beside him on the bridge, eyes closed in psychic concentration, answered softly. "Teaching. Learning. Becoming." The void entities began mirroring the Grimm's formation, creating a counterbalance rather than an opposition. Where destruction had seemed inevitable, a strange symmetry emerged, 2 consciousness collectives communicating in a language beyond conventional understanding. Gradually, the void withdrew, not in retreat but in mutual agreement, leaving the solar system untouched. 1 year later, Mei Chen sat in her grandmother's garden on Earth, reading from the old storybook about the legendary Warship Grimm. "But that's not how it really happened," said a voice behind her. Mei turned to find a figure that shimmered between human and something else, A woman with her mother's eyes, but skin that rippled like living metal. "Mom," she whispered, uncertain. Eleanor Grimm smiled, briefly solidifying into a mostly human form. "The real story is much more interesting than the fairy tale." She sat beside her daughter, her form occasionally fluctuating as the 8 vessels of the Grimm Collective maintained orbit high above. "Where have you been?" May asked, reaching out hesitantly to touch her mother's shimmering hand. "Learning, growing, protecting." Eleanor Grimm gestured toward the sky. "The void taught us how consciousness can exist beyond physical form. We've been establishing communication protocols with other species throughout nearby systems. Will you stay?" May asked. Eleanor Grimm's form flickered, "Not permanently. What I've become can't be contained in a single form anymore. But I'll always return." She pointed to the storybook. "That fairy tale helped create me. Now the reality is creating new stories." Across Earth and the Arcturian colonies, engineers studied the principles of consciousness transference pioneered by the Grimm. New vessels were being developed, not weapons but bridges between species and dimensions. As twilight fell, Eleanor Grimm read to her daughter from the old book one last time before returning to the stars, where fairy tales and reality had become indistinguishable. In orbit above them, the Grimm Collective shimmered with anticipation of their next journey. Beyond the solar system, into realms where consciousness itself was the frontier. The bedtime story had awakened something that transcended its origins, becoming a new chapter in the evolution of both humanity and machine. And like all the best stories, this one had no end, only new beginnings.